How's it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask any questions that you like about politics, and there's not going to be any roasting or judgments or debating. It is just going to be good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that it is particularly confusing these days because of all the misinformation and propaganda that is being spread about willy-nilly. So if you got any questions about politics, all you got to do is put them in the chat here, and I will answer them as objectively and sincerely as I can possibly manage. This is not one of those shows where people fight with each other or argue with each other or try to win or try to own each other or try to destroy the other person. There will be no calling of people names here. There's no "you're a fascist" or "you're a cuck" here on Ask Me Anything About Politics. It is just going to be good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. I don't care what your political ideology is. You're further to the left than me. If you're further to the right than me. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican or if you call yourself something completely different. All questions are welcome here. I can't guarantee I'll be able to answer all of them, but I will try my best to answer it as sincerely and objectively and accurately. So yeah, things are weird these days. Things are weird in politics. I think it's really important that people be informed about what their government is doing. It's really important that people know the kind of power that they have as citizens, and that we can all kind of like organize together to try to create a better country. I think that is a very valuable goal to have. And so if you got any questions about that, maybe you're a person on the right and you've always wanted to ask a person on the left a question, not to be mean or a jerk, but just because you're sincerely curious. You got a real life left wing person here that you can ask your question to. If you're worried about what's going on and you don't know how to help and you need help finding things to do, like I could be a resource for you there as well, because I've been working in the activist space for a couple of years now, and so I'm pretty well acquainted with a bunch of different groups and all the different things that people can do. So I would love for you guys to ask me anything about that too, but maybe you just have a really simple question about politics or government that you did not learn because they didn't have civics at your high school. They didn't have civics at my high school, so I feel you on that. And there's no such thing as a dumb question, so I'm not going to make fun of you for not knowing things or asking something that is high school level, because I didn't learn that stuff in high school either. Errol Abraham, good to see you again, says, what do you think about policy/promise of reparations for slavery? It feels to me like a really dangerous policy because Americans seem toxic to the idea of other Americans getting something for free, particularly if that other person does not look like them or practice the same religion as them. I know what the argument is for reparations, and I'm completely open to it. Like, I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. And I also don't think that it is quote unquote getting something for free, because these are people that have been suffering through histories of institutional racism and, starting 5 miles behind the starting line because of things that are no fault of their own. But yeah, just like looking at the way that Americans deal with things like welfare and student loan forgiveness. It just seems like an idea that is going to raise a lot of people's hackles. And so I think that the first step is going to have to be sort of like addressing that instinct in Americans. I think that Americans are open to other things that could potentially try to ease the burden of, surviving through Jim Crow and slavery and stuff like that to modern day. But even then, people seem to get real fucking pissed off about what affirmative action means. What is it going to take away from white Christian America? So yeah, I think it's like a really difficult policy to discuss. I think that there are other ways to help marginalized communities than just to give them money like that. I think that looking at programs that just give everybody more is probably a safer way to go right now. But yeah, not saying no, saying I'm interested, not prepared to die on this hill. Skater Poser says, "Where did the whole liberal leftist thing come from when it's two different terms?" You know, there is a wide diversity of opinion within the Democratic wing of the of the country. There are people that are much more progressive, like AOC and Bernie Sanders. There are people that are much more centrist, like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And so a lot of different terms pop up to sort of like try to parse the very specific ideological differences between the various factions within the Democratic Party. I think that the vitriol, directed at people within the party needs to stop. Like, I'm a progressive, but I don't hate anybody who's a more centrist Democrat. I think that, trying to, convince people to not vote for somebody because they're a progressive or because they're a centrist only helps the Republican Party. And so I think we need to recognize when our infighting is not being productive anymore. Okay, what's up, Mia? Good to see you again. Royal Chief says, "What about us American Indians? You believe we are entitled to reparations as well?" I mean, definitely. Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about marginalized groups of people that the American government has done atrocities to, Native Americans, American Indians is fucking right there at the top of the list, my guy. Fletch Lives Again says, "What was the original purpose of presidential pardons? Seems like not really needed, being abused currently." I actually don't know, Fletch. And there's that, and there's also, you know, people's Fifth Amendment rights of not incriminating themselves. I don't really get the value of either of those things. Yeah, and if I'm being, I'm not ready to die on that hill about the Fifth Amendment, but like, let's fucking get rid of the presidential pardon power yesterday, like it is, or we need stronger rules around it because the Trump administration is abusing the pardon power like wildly, as have other presidents, but like the way that the Trump administration is abusing it is, above and beyond. Okay, Royal Chiefs, I already did that one. Black Trump supporter says, "People like you are dividing this nation." No, I'm not. Ask a question or I will block you. Rogue Mayhem says, "Can you outline the marginalized communities?" Yeah, it's anybody that isn't a straight white Christian male. It is women, it is people of other religions, it is people who have, darker skin, it is women, it is people in the LGBTQ community. It's a bunch of. Eru Abraham says, "Fear of loss is real, so you're more into universal policies." Got it. I love the idea of a policy that blocks rich people from taking advantage of it. But when you do that, you create a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, and you sort of you create more of an incentive structure for rich Americans to try to dismantle those programs. You kind of create this barrier between rich Americans and poor Americans. And so, I would love it. Maybe we could ask rich people to opt out of those programs or something like that. Noon Eat Tall says, "Whose fault is the government shutdown? Republicans." Timothy Holden says, "Thoughts on the streamer Destiny?" He's very intelligent. He's a very good debater. I think he's a little too argumentative for my taste. Like, I think he should probably be not trying to win as much and maybe just trying to bring people along to where he is politically. I do not care for his stance on Israel, but I also think that anybody who is talking about politics and popular is a net positive because we just need to get more people engaged and focused on what's going on. All right. Mike Laurinaitis says, "Can you expand for me? How specifically are the women in this country being marginalized?" So, Mike, that's a really good question. And as you go back through the history of America, it is more and more obvious how women are being marginalized. So, like, we go back to before the suffrage movement, women couldn't vote. If we go back to, I think, like the 1960s, like, women couldn't get a credit card without their husband's permission and stuff like that. And as we have been dismantling those sort of like legal barriers for women to just be able to live whatever kind of lives they're living, there are more insidious cultural and that's another word I'm looking for, um, the sort of power structures themselves tend to marginalize women as well. So when I say culturally, I mean things like we still judge women very harshly on how they look, where men are allowed to look however they like. We still describe a woman who is acting like an alpha male as being bossy or a bitch and stuff like that. Whereas we sort of like value those qualities in men, we punish women for having those qualities. It is much more difficult for women to get to certain levels in business because a lot of businesses still operate like a boys' club. A lot of the culture that we see in advertising just sort of like reinforces certain ideas about what women have to look like and how they have to behave. And this is absolutely not a definitive list of all the ways in which women are still currently being marginalized, but there's just like a lot of ways that they don't seem obvious until somebody who is a woman that you are close to just like outlines the ways in which they need to structure their lives that are harder than yours. Right. And not to mention the fact that like abortion bans are currently making it really dangerous for women to be pregnant in certain states. Okay. Matt says, "Why does anyone care what you think?" Because I'm really smart and I have a lot of interesting things to say. Marine Tatted King says, "When Japan and China and all African countries are nationalist, is that wrong? Only one race allowed." I think that patriotism is fine. I think that nationalism is generally wrong in every nation. Like, you as citizens should not think that you are better than the citizens of other countries just because of where you were born or where you immigrated to. You should not think that your country should be supreme above all other countries. You should be inclusive of immigration and not shitty about people that don't look like you. And so I find that those ideologies tend to exist much more in nationalism than in patriotism. Okay, so this guy RC just said Berenstein, which is an anti-Semitic dog whistle. Said "Make America Christian Again." Very much not a dog whistle right there. Okay, Poppy Zeke says, "Is America fascist?" America is not fascist, but the current government is attempting to turn America fascist. Okay, let's see here. Scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up. Cat says, "LOL, body autonomy making it difficult to vote." Not sure what that means, Cat. It kind of feels like you're taking the piss, but Cat says, "We are not Africa or China. Whether you like it or not, this is a nation made by immigrants." Cat, your spelling is terrible. And body autonomy is making it difficult to vote. Yeah, I'm not sure where you're coming from politically, Cat, but also ask a question, or you're going to get booted. J. Oku says, "SCOTUS looking at the Voting Rights Act of 65. That is, yeah, they are potentially going to make it much more difficult for Democrats and people of color who live in red states to be able to vote. Mia says, "Yeah, I haven't even passed the Equal Rights Amendment." That is true. They have not passed the Equal Rights Amendment. Cuz 808 says, "What's better, wrestling or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?" You have to answer. No, I don't, cuz RC says the guy that thinks he's a chosen person. Boy, oh boy, that was a great block. I'm so glad I blocked you already. Come and Get Some says, "Give me one reason why I should think you're qualified to even ask you a political question." I'm really smart, but also like nobody is forcing you to be here. Come and Get Some. Out the Way says, "Live in California. I'm an independent, and Newsom is destroying the state. How can you support him?" Well, that's a really interesting question. Out the Way. Like, first of all, you're assuming that I like stan Governor Newsom for some reason. I think it is. I don't think that it would be a controversial thing to say that Governor Newsom is doing a mixed job as governor, but I would still rather have a Democratic governor than a Republican governor for reasons that seem obvious. But yeah, what are there some issues that you have specifically with what Newsom is doing Out the Way? Because I find that when people identify as further to the right than me, or independents, or centrists, or whatever, we tend to have different things that we dislike about what Governor Newsom is doing, and I think that part of what he's trying to do is be a centrist governor for every American, and so he ends up pissing off people on the right and people on the left. But yeah, what is your issue with Newsom? Let me know. Big A Chauvin says, being proud of your country has nothing to do with what you're saying." Yeah, but being proud of your country is being patriotic. Being nationalist is thinking that your country is better than everybody else. Okay. Return to Dust says, never been a Christian nation. That is accurate. Sweet Mouse says, Scooby Doo or Archie? That's not a political question. Kaihu says, what about public ownership of the means of production? So I am for incentivizing companies to be employee owned. It is a much more equitable distribution of profits. And also, we should be giving workers more of a say in the decisions that get made at the higher echelons so that, the people, the CEOs, are not making decisions that benefit them only and fuck over all the workers. I'm not ready to plant my flag on 100% public ownership of the means of production. I'm sure that somebody could make an argument for why that is bad. I'm not prepared to make the argument either for or against. CG Banks, good to see you again, says, do you think the rumors about Trump closing the border, not letting us out? I haven't heard those rumors. It sounds kind of conspiracy theorists. I wouldn't put it past him, but yeah, I don't know. Kazi808, stop spamming the comments. You know I love you, buddy, but that's not a question about politics. All right, Average Joe, Ecuadorian baseball pitcher, Gamer Jam. Good to see you again, all you guys. I'm going to get to this Gamer Jam question first. Why is it always you can't tax the super rich, they'll leave, and not why the fuck do we allow white sociopaths, elite sociopaths to hold us hostage? I'm with you, Gamer Jam. Yeah, fucking tax the rich, man. Tax the fucking rich. And if they try to leave, tax their money as it's trying to walk out the door. Out the way 209 says criminal justice reforms fueling the crime surge. So I don't believe that is at all related to any policy that Gavin Newsom is doing. The reason why crime surges is because of things like poverty and instability and feelings of hopelessness and being marginalized. And what Newsom has done has not increased any of that at all. There are certain cities in America that have decriminalized petty theft below like $2,000, and that did increase shoplifting by a lot, but that was not a policy. If you have a specific policy that you have a problem with, let me know. But yeah, all of what you just said was not. You can't put that on Governor Newsom's shoulders. There's so many other factors that have increased crime across the country, not just in California. And I'm happy to talk about that. A lot of that is on Trump's shoulders, if I'm being frank. Ramos says, what part of politics actually scares you? The part where the billionaire class is attempting to control all of our information spheres, the way that they are trying to capture social media, mainstream media, higher education, even high school education. They are trying to put their finger on the scale to implement a philosophy whereby people will vote for rich people to have more money and power, for reasons. Reba M says, why is Trump the only per se president that's doing the most? I mean, lots of presidents have quote unquote done the most. He's just, what do you call it? He's just, he's just really sloppy. He's a sloppy, immature child who has the attention span of a goldfish. Zero morals, corrupt as hell. Is that what you mean? Okay. John Abbott says, thoughts on the malfunctioning artillery shell that exploded over I-5 on Saturday? I mean, it's one of two things. It's either evidence that Governor Newsom was correct in objecting to those military exercises that 100% did not need to take place over an active freeway. Governor Newsom was right to close down that section of the freeway for people's safety because people could have fucking died because of that. Or they literally exploded it over California because they were trying to scare people and they were trying to do damage to California infrastructure to try to, I don't know, weaken the state because they don't like that we're a blue state and that Governor Newsom stands up to Donald Trump. It's fucking psychotic, my guy. Religious Nonsense says, why are there so many Republican Gen Z now? Because the billionaire class has made a concerted effort to attract Gen Z. using social media capture and the quote-unquote manosphere. It is completely inorganic. Specifically, young Gen Z men have been targeted because Gen Z men are more vulnerable because of things like the loneliness epidemic and being left behind in things like getting a college education, STEM degrees, and stuff like that. Shaggy, bro just said billionaires, LMAO. What is it? What is the problem that you have with me saying billionaires, Shaggy? Religious nonsense is, yeah, I notice it's mostly young men. Yeah, that it's insidious. It is fueled by ungodly amounts of money. Yeah, this is squarely an inorganic movement created by billionaires so they can convince people to vote for Republicans so that they can dismantle the government so that they can be richer and more powerful. Shaggy says Democrats disenfranchise young men and they have moved conservative. It's not inorganic. That's not true, Shaggy. That's not true at all. Let's see here. Yorkie Love says he's done the most damage. He's done what he needs to seize more power. He's done nothing for the people. That is accurate. Rachel says, I live here and they don't actually ever shoot stuff over the freeway. That is true. Michael Kaser says Social Security is only taxed up to $176,000. Everything is not taxed towards Social Security. That is accurate. Maybe we should remove the cap on how much we can tax people for Social Security. Then maybe rich people will actually be paying their fair fucking share. Okay, Salsa Surf says, clueless, George Soros, who is a billionaire, has been funding the Democratic Party forever. So Salsa Surf, there are around 1,000 billionaires just in America alone. And so naming one billionaire who is left-wing does not prove that billionaires en masse are supporting the Democratic Party. Salsa Surf, if you are curious about it, I will explain to you in irrefutable detail why the billionaire class is supporting the Republican Party more than the Democratic Party. But I kind of don't believe that you care about data. I think you're probably just here to try to own a lib. Salsa Surf says, Democrats like you would love to see billionaires when you're clueless about it. Salsa Surf, you're kind of proving my point that I didn't think you were here in good faith. Ask me to prove that billionaires are part of the billionaire class, Salsa Surf. I'm begging you. Eddie15 says Trump. That is the kind of comment that gets you blocked because it's not a question. Okay. BS2 says Musk, 7,000 low orbit satellites, largest AI farm, robot cars and drones, and our private data. Let's see here. Apple user says Soros never part of the administration like Musk with Doge. That is accurate. S.E. Morgan says, is Trump trying to make America so bad that no one wants to come here? No, he's trying to make lives harder for people that are not billionaires. And that way, we will all be struggling so much just trying to survive that we won't have the time, money, or energy to do anything to threaten the power of the billionaire class ruling all over us. Ruling over all of us is what I should say. Okay. Average Joe, so sorry. I had a lot to get to on TikTok, and so let's see here. Salsa Surf says Amazon, Google, they are all billionaires. Yes, but they are not all part of the Democratic Party, Salsa Surf. Salsa Surf, remember, you have one more chance to ask a question or you're going to get booted. But you are just here. You know what? I'm done with you. Sorry. Yeah, Salsa Surf. I have asked you multiple times to not just spam the comments with right-wing propaganda. Let's see here. Shaggy says, yes, the king that will not be in office after 4 years. Shaggy, Trump is already talking about running for another term. So do you really think that that is some sort of proof that he is not trying to be a dictator, Shaggy? Ali N, good to see you again, says, how long can they legally keep the government shut down indefinitely? Reba M says, so crazy how Elon Musk created this mess. Now he's MIA. For real. All right, let's get into some of these other questions here. Average Joe. Gen Z Palestinian American candidate for Illinois' 9th District is running against Democratic hospice resident Jan Schakowsky. She recently posted a TikTok claiming her opponent is receiving funding from AIPAC. Would you happen to have any idea why that may be happening? I am stumped. Okay, so yeah, there are a lot of very good people in the Democratic Party who are still taking AIPAC money for a couple of very good faith reasons. Number one, campaigns are expensive. And so you need to get money wherever you can. There is a massive difference between the money that is available to Republican candidates versus what is available to Democratic candidates. And so Democrats are always operating on a loss, and so they have to take whatever help that they can get. Where campaign finance reform is concerned, I think it is clear that accepting money from certain parties does make you more susceptible to their influence. But until we can unilaterally disarm by passing some campaign finance reform, I think that Democrats need to be able to take money. And the candidates who don't have to, like AOC or Bernie Sanders, the ones who can afford to take that stand, I say fucking support those guys to heaven. Like, let's make all of them so famous that they don't need to take money from AIPAC or billionaires or giant corporations. The other issue is that AIPAC is really powerful at losing candidates their primaries. And so potentially if one Democrat is taking AIPAC money, they recognize that not only do they have the value of having those additional dollars, but that AIPAC is going to go after their primary opponent if they don't take AIPAC money. So it's probably just a really easy way for her to beat out that progressive. I am waiting on bated breath for America to prove to AIPAC that they do not have the power that they think they have. But so far, America has just proved them right. There are a bunch of really great progressives that AIPAC has targeted that are now no longer in government because AIPAC is very powerful. But if people like you and me do the work of getting people like Kat Abu Ghazali, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, unfortunately, and I sound like a real asshole trying. If we can help elect people like Kat and Mamdani and Cy Cott in San Francisco, then we will be sending that message that AIPAC money is not a benefit, is a liability, and everybody should stop taking it. But until that happens, I'm not going to fault a Democrat for taking AIPAC money to stay competitive. Okay, Arrow Abraham says all Democrats are not grown from the same tree. Don't vote for people who take AIPAC money. I agree with that until we get to the general, Arrow Abraham, in which case you still got to vote for the Democrat because look at what their fucking Republicans are doing right now. You're going to reward them with re-election after they fucking did all this shit and allow all this shit to fucking happen? Unreal, man. I'm not saying you're saying that, Arrow. I'm just saying in general. Usernamed says politicians are the problem. A lot of Americans are waking up to that. Losing lost faith in our system. Well, you shouldn't say all politicians are the same, username, because there are good ones and there are bad ones. Conjag Skillywag says, do you think Charlie Kirk being shot was bad? Absolutely 100%. I condemn violence in the strongest possible language. I do not condone any type of violence, be it political or property damage or whatever. I did not like Charlie Kirk. I think that he was destructive to our, political discourse. I think that he was a propagandist. He was a liar. He was an extremist. And so, but I do not think that that means that we are allowed to do extrajudicial murders on people that we don't like or that we disagree with. Joey C says, why should we not continue to help Israel? So we have a law on the books already that says that if a government is found guilty of doing war crimes or genocide, then we are legally obligated to not assist them financially or militarily. And that is a law that is currently on our books, and the Biden administration violated it, and the Trump administration is violating it even more than the Biden administration did. And so, yeah, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Arrow Abraham says, how do you fight legalized violence when is it self-defense? So, Arrow Abraham, it's a very difficult position to be somebody who wants to fight against legal violence, like from ICE or the police or whatever. It's a very difficult position to be in. When you recognize that doing anything that could be construed as violence on your part is going to come with legal consequences that are not going to be there for ICE and the police, and it is going to help push a narrative that we need our police and ICE to be able to do whatever the fuck they want, because look at how violent these protesters are. And the violence that comes out of the 99% is so much overhyped than the violence that comes out of the police and ICE. It is a losing proposition, and it fucking sucks. But if you look back to the Civil Rights Act, the people who marched on Selma, they did it with the knowledge that they were going to potentially get the shit kicked out of them. But that was their tactic. They wanted to show America, we are here peacefully, and they are beating the shit out of us. They are harming us. They are potentially killing us. It was a risk, and it worked. We had a very successful civil rights movement because of sacrifices that people like fuck me, I forgot the dude's name. Lewis, right? Lewis? He just passed away recently. Anyways, so yeah, I can't tell any American citizen that they should just sit there while a cop or ICE beats the shit out of them. Like, I can't tell you that. I can only tell you that being violent back is not going to help the movement. And it's potentially not even going to help you. Like, the consequences to you fighting back are going to be great. Both messaging wise and potentially physically, potentially punitively. Like, you could have a longer jail sentence because of that stuff, John Lewis! Thank you, John Lewis. Good trouble. Yes, Rich was here. You're completely fucking right about that. But I had his last name. See, I'm smart. Okay, scrolling on the bottom of these. Ecuadorian baseball pitcher says, as an Ecuadorian, I'm going to run for president of Ecuador in 2040, and I'm going to ban Trump and Pam Bondi permanently. You have my support. You have my support, Ecuadorian baseball pitcher. Go for it, man. Italiana74 says, what do you think of his ballroom and all the money spent or him shitting on protesters? There's a tactic that Donald Trump and his party are using of ridicule, where they're doing things that are immature, stupid, reckless, irresponsible. And then we go out there and we say they're being stupid, they're being reckless, they're being irresponsible, racist, misogynistic, childlike, whatever. And then their response is just to do that more. And his base thinks that's fucking hysterical. And the more that we are sober and scolding they're doing that, the funnier what they are doing to their base becomes. I think that we need to start doing more ignoring of the things that Trump is doing, like posting a video of him wearing a crown, and then flying a fucking F-16, which is Rich from a fucking draft dodger, and then dumping shit on a bunch of protesters. I think that more of us need to say, I didn't see it. I ignore because he's stupid. And as far as the, what was the other thing that you asked about? Italiana. What was the other thing you asked about? Oh, the money spent on the ballroom. I believe a lot of that money is coming from donations, which obviously is just like bribes to Donald Trump. But I don't think that we can argue that, it's a waste of taxpayer dollars when it potentially is not coming from taxpayers. It's possible that they are cooking the books a little bit and that some of that money is coming from the taxpayers, but I have not seen that reporting. I've only seen that the money is coming from donations. But yeah, he's fucking ripping up the East Wing of the White House so we can build a stupid fucking golden ballroom while Americans are starving and can't afford homes or healthcare. Like, it's a bad look, my guy. Ooh. All right. TikTok comments. Bottom. Sarah says, so who will own it? America will own it. Sarah. S.E. Morgan says, we need to just shake our keys, so to speak. Agreed. Shell Bell says they all peaked in high school. I think they didn't, Shell Bell, and that's the reason why they're doing this. Like, I don't know if you saw clips of Stephen Miller and how wildly unpopular he was in high school. Like, they're all trying to be the bully that, shoved them in lockers now. Whereas some people that got bullied used that experience to think, wow, that felt like shit. I should do everything I can to make sure that other people don't feel like shit. Some people think I need to get that powerful so I can do that to weak people like me too. And that's what they're doing, Lucky Penny says, helping Argentina and not America. That is accurate. Let's see here. S.E. Morgan says they peaked in middle school. Yeah, potentially. You, sir, need more coffee says Congress approved a law for Israel's veterans to get more money than our own veterans. Make it make sense. Is that true? You should need more coffee? Do you know what the law is? If it's like S or House Resolution something, let me know about that. Yeah, I want to look that up because that's infuriating. Apple user says, "Where is the best place to get a glizzy?" I don't know. Lindsay says, "Government contractors, extortion, and corruption." Accurate. Okay. Curious one says, "How bad is it that military leaders are stepping down due to Trump?" Um, it's a difficult question to answer, Curious one, because we do want people in those positions who are doing malicious compliance, who are gumming up the works, who will say, fuck you, make me, or fire me when Pete Hegseth or Donald Trump tells them to do something that is illegal, barbaric, unconstitutional, etc. But then there are also people who it's really important that they do these public resignations because then they are calling attention to what the government is doing. So yeah, it's a delicate balance. Some people I think need to do the resignation. Some people I think should stick around. I am buoyed by how many career people in the military do not seem to be swayed or charmed by what Donald Trump is doing. So, thankfully there are still some good people in there. Average Joe says, "Did you know a common definition of a state in political science is the government's monopoly on the legal use of violence?" I have heard that definition before, Average Joe, and I think that that's relevant and definitely accurate in certain ways. Barr says, "We need to do another No Kings on Black Friday and Cyber Monday nationwide blackout." Yeah, I fully encourage general striking and boycotting in order to send a message to the people that have all the money that we're not fucking putting up with us. Okay, HR 8445. Just gonna put this in the old search window so I can make sure to read it after the live stream. 8445. HR 8445. Alrighty. Let's see here. Barr says, "We have to hit them pockets to make a difference." Accurate. Bars, I hope that you're doing it. Bars, and if you're not working with people that are already doing that, then start that. Start the movement. Christy B says, "Who can we boycott?" So I would say start with companies that have donated heavily to Trump and the Republican Party. Then you want to go on to companies and institutions that have bent the knee to Trump and the Republican Party. And from there, maybe look at companies that have really terrible employee satisfaction and have been exploiting their workers for a while. Chad Bitson says, "Can you explain which side is causing the shutdown? Everyone says with confidence that's the other." Absolutely, Chad. So, as with everything in politics, it is much more complicated than just it is their fault or their fault. The story behind the shutdown is this: the Republican Party, currently, based on the rules of government, needs Democratic votes in order to pass the spending bill, which is how we fund the government. However, the Republican Party is not negotiating with Democrats on that bill. They are just saying, do what we want or fuck off. They are holding America hostage, basically. They are saying, we don't care if America gets hurt by the shutdown. We're going to use the shutdown to make Democrats agree with the things that we want. And the Democratic Party did do that a little bit over the summer, and a bunch of Democrats got really pissed off about that because they were like, the argument that was being made at the time was this is going to hurt a lot of Americans, and so it is better to keep the government open, and that way those Americans won't get hurt. And then Democrats were like, no, we are willing to sacrifice, but we need to communicate that this is wrong with what the government is doing right now, So the Democrats picked one issue specifically of all the many issues that they could have with the Trump administration, and that is that the quote-unquote big beautiful bill does not what's the word I'm looking for? Not resurrect or re-up basically on subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. So if you need healthcare in 2026, your insurance premiums are going to skyrocket. The cost of services is going to skyrocket. Like, that's everybody in America is going to be suffering from higher healthcare costs if the Affordable Care Act subsidies do not get renewed. That's the word I was looking for. Are you still here? Whoever asked that question, Chad, are you still here? I want to make sure I'm not talking to nobody. So the Democrats said, renew the Affordable Care Act subsidies, or we are not going to vote for your spending bill, and the government will shut down. So the Republicans said, okay, we are going to hurt Americans one way or the other. We're going to hurt them by shutting down the government, or we're going to hurt them by increasing their healthcare costs exponentially. We don't give a shit about hurting Americans, so either one of these is fine for us. You want to shut down the government and hurt Americans? That's cool with us. If you want to sign on to the spending bill, then we can hurt Americans by increasing their healthcare costs. So it really does come down to, you know, what your opinion of the shutdown is, who you want to put the blame on. For me, it is the Republicans' job to negotiate with the Democratic Party because they do not have 60 seats in the Senate. Like, that's the fucking rules. And if they don't like it, they have full control of the government right now. They could eliminate the filibuster and change that 60 vote threshold to a simple majority of 50 votes, and they could open up the government tomorrow. So for me, it's pretty clear that this is the Republican shutdown. It's clear to me that Democrats are on the right side here because they're trying to decrease the amount of suffering that Americans are going through under the Trump administration, which Trump administration has been doing a lot of things to increase people's suffering and make their lives a lot harder. All right. Are you still here, Chad? Says, oh, I knew a lot of that, but not the ACA was the straw that breaks the camel's back part of it. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome, Chad. I didn't know they could keep it running that way, so they straight up are making us suffer. Yeah, 100%. The Republican Party could get rid of the filibuster and shut the government open tomorrow, but they just don't care. They don't care. Okay, and some people would maybe argue that they are benefiting from the shutdown because it makes the grift and lack of oversight and hiding the fellow with the island files that much easier. Okay, a lot winning says Jarrett, the wannabe Seinfeld. Won't ever happen, bro. I'm not trying to be Seinfeld. I'm not trying to date a 17-year-old when I'm 45. Let's see here. John Abbott says you don't demolish part of the White House to build a gilded ballroom for yourself if you plan on leaving. What John Abbott said is accurate. Bars says them stock investors are loving every minute. That is true. Becca Wow says, and it seems like neither side ever wants to get rid of the filibuster. So Becca, there are more people in the Democratic Party who are willing to get rid of the filibuster in order to pass, you know, good Democratic policies than there are people that don't want to get rid of the filibuster. But the problem is we never give the Democrats enough seats in the Senate to actually do all the things that they want to do. In 2008, we had a 0-seat filibuster-proof majority, meaning that we needed every single fucking vote in order to do anything. And there were Democrats in that 60-seat coalition who were not cool with the Affordable Care Act, who were not cool with codifying Roe versus Wade. And so the Obama administration needed to do some negotiating. And so now we don't have a public option in the Affordable Care Act because of Joe Lieberman, one fucking vote. And during the Biden administration, Manchin and Sinema were the ones that came out and said, we are not cool with getting rid of the filibuster. So that meant, you know, no John Lewis Voting Rights Act, no codifying protections for Roe versus Wade, no making partisan gerrymandering illegal, no campaign finance reform, none of the things that you and I and everybody else in this country desperately want, because two Democrats wouldn't get rid of the filibuster, and the Republicans were willing to filibuster all of those things. Okay, Black Dom says, name one good Democratic policy. The Inflation Reduction Act brought inflation from 9% down to 2.4%, and it was the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history. It was revitalizing small towns with clean, safe, green energy jobs. You're welcome. Black Dom. Jack says, was Trump threatened jail time before his presidency regarding business? Ooh, that's a really good question, Jack. So I don't believe that he was in any legal jeopardy or jeopardy of going to jail before his first administration. But he was threatened afterwards, not because the Democrats were going to punish him, but because he had done so many illegal things. Okay. Somebody said, that's all folks bugs, says Trump sacrificed his wealth for the country and Biden sacrificed the country for his wealth. So that's not an accurate thing that you just said. That's all folks. Trump has increased his personal fortune by $6 billion using the office of the presidency. The Biden administration did not profit off the presidency. Maybe Hunter did by throwing his dad's name around, but Joe Biden did not. So that's all, folks. I don't really think that you're here in good faith. So I'm sure that you are going to just put some more nonsense after that. Okay. A lot winning says, say Republicans are gerrymandering. Hold on a second. How could we expect a group of people who don't know the difference between a man and a woman to know the difference between a king and a president? Okay, so that's a block there. Fantastic. Okay, Average Joe, I think we know why he picked Seinfeld. Anti-Semitism. Okay. Okay, that's all, folks. Bug says Trump won the popular vote and all the swing states. Dems are acting against the will of the people. You know what? That's all, folks. You know, you're not asking any questions, so you are out of here. Gimberlina says if Dems take House, Senate, is there potential both Trump and Vance impeached and Dems in the White House? So that's a really good question, Kimberlina. In order to actually remove Trump from office, we would need 67 seats in the Senate, which is pretty unlikely, but definitely possible if we get a lot of Americans doing the work of convincing people to vote for Democrats, even in deep red states for Senate. So it is mathematically possible, but statistically very unlikely that we get those seats. But let's say in a hypothetical world that Dems take the House and they get all 67 seats in the Senate. Yes, Donald Trump will very likely be impeached and removed from office in that scenario, which would make J.D. Vance the president. Now, has J.D. Vance done enough to merit him also being impeached at that point? I think probably yes, though I'm not prepared to make that argument right now. I would need to sort of like go through the, read the transcript, go through the log of all the shit that J.D. Vance has done so far. But I think it's highly likely that he has already done impeachable offenses. So yeah, it's possible. It's possible that potentially happened, but yeah, I don't know. And in that case, then the Speaker of the House, who would be a Democrat, would then become President of the United States. But that again is possible, but extremely unlikely to happen. Chad Bitson says we need to understand those hypothetical scenarios. That for me shows a glimpse of hope. I'm glad to be giving you that hope. What's up, Grumpy Cat? Good to see you. Bars says the capitulation alone should be enough. I completely agree with that, Bars. Let's see here. Mila Mayhem, good to see you again. Can we implement Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution? He's done more than needed to get it done. People have asked me about that before. Article 2, Section 4. And let's see here. Also, can we remove office through impeachment for campaign church? So yeah, apparently this is what I thought before Mila, and I just confirmed it. The power to impeach the president is only held within Congress. So the way that we impeach the president is by voting for Democrats in the Senate and in the House, and convincing other people to vote for Democrats in the Senate and in the House. Because without the control of Congress, we do not have any ability to impeach Donald Trump. Okay, Apple Butter Rum says JD doesn't have Trump's followers. That is accurate. Naked Eddie Comedy says, how are we feeling about the New Jersey governor's race? I'm feeling pretty good about it. I mean, Republicans have won the governor's race in New Jersey in the past. Chris Christie famously was governor of New Jersey for a really long time. So it's not unheard of that a Republican could win that, but I don't know. I feel like I've been watching a lot of Democrats win unlikely elections since Trump got elected the second time, because people are, I don't know, I think people are turning against the Republican Party. People are turning against the Republican Party, but they're not turning towards the Democratic Party. So the swing back to Democrats is not as dramatic as I think it should be. I think people are upset about establishment Democrats. I think they're upset about business as usual Democrats. And so if we give them fresh, new, exciting Democrats, then potentially we could get that exciting swing, not just away from Republicans, but towards the Democratic Party. And I think that's why candidates like Mamdani and AOC and Jasmine Crockett are so popular these days. Alrighty. Lickle Vicious, what a name, says, do you know the AFD and reform? I don't know. I don't know what you mean by that. You, sir, need more coffee. Says, can Trump get removed from his entire cabinet under Article 2, Section 4? I don't believe... Yes, his cabinet would leave, but J.D. Vance would stay. His cabinet could remove him using the 25th Amendment, but his cabinet's not going to do that because they love him. Curious One says, we need to get the non-voters. Yes, 100% on that. Okay. Average Joe, I have muted him. I don't know if he is, what do you call it? If he is muted on Twitch, if you guys are still seeing him, but I'm not seeing him anymore. All right. Lickle says, what do you think about the big beautiful bill? It's a disgusting piece of shit piece of legislation that transfers wealth from the poor to the rich. And the rich already have plenty, and the poor don't have enough. So why are we making that problem worse? Doesn't seem smart to me. Alrighty, I guess he's not blocked for you guys then. Sorry, Average Joe. I'll make you a mod so that you can block him, but I don't have the ability to do that right now. So I'll do that on the next go around. You will have those powers. Short says AFD is the Germany far right party. Yes. And I'm guessing Reform must be like the far right party in the UK. Am I accurate about that? Yeah, I mean, all of these far right parties are, cut from the same cloth. It is all, fascist-ish, authoritarian-ish, dictator-ish, demagoguing marginalized communities, hyper anti-immigration, hyper us versus them, hyper helping the rich over the poor. It's, it's all the same crap. Becca Wow. Arrow Abraham says 2028 Democrats. I say let them run in the primaries, and then the primaries will decide. Becca Wow says, didn't realize you're on Twitch. I'll be sure to find you there. Yeah, I multicast just in case the algorithm gods decide to punish me on any specific channel, It's like for example, let's say that like one of the channels gets bought by a bunch of MAGA people and they want to punish left-wing creators like myself, then maybe I would have a backup plan in that, hypothetical scenario. Alrighty. Let's see here. AFD is directly connected to the neo-Nazi movement, but their courts cannot ban them anymore due to popularity. That's a fucking bummer. I'm really upset about that. Lickle says, should the U.S. abolish the Electoral College? Yes, 100%. And if you live in a state that has not signed on yet to the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, then you should call up your representatives and say, hey, has our state signed up yet for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact? Because if we did sign up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, then we could potentially nullify the Electoral College without needing a constitutional convention. So again, call up your representatives and say, I want us to sign up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Where are we at on this? Do it now, and I will organize all of my friends to demand the same. Mike Green says, when do you think the government shutdown will end, and what will end it? I do not think that anybody is prepared to make an accurate prediction about that. I have no idea. The Trump administration doesn't really seem to give a shit about American suffering, but there do seem to be some Republicans who are breaking with their party to try to make negotiations happen. There are a few people on the left that have jumped ship, like Fetterman, and I think that's pretty shitty of them. But nobody. I don't think anybody really knows. I don't think that the what do you call it? I don't think that there has been enough insider reporting to suggest that we are going to be ending it anytime soon. Let's see here. Chris 10 says, Ballroom, 2 planes for Kristi Noem, Qatar jets, double the money spent than a year ago while giving Americans less. That is 100% accurate. Kimberlina says, do you think the files will conveniently be lost in the construction? Potentially. So Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are the number 1 and number 2 of the FBI right now. And the FBI is in control of that information. And Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are hardcore MAGA fanatics. And so they will do whatever is best for Donald Trump, even if that means shredding, documents that they're not allowed to shred. Jack says, is my comment getting filtered again? Yeah, I haven't seen anything from you in a minute, Jack. So, yeah, I do not see it. I don't see it here. All right. Lindsay says, he'll leave us with a 3x deficit to clean up again. That is accurate. Rich was here. Says, can we really call Fetterman a Democrat at this point? I did not like Kristen Sinema, and I did not like Joe Manchin, but they gave Democrats the gavel in the Senate, and for that, I say thank you very much. And John Fetterman is one more Democratic vote in the Senate that we desperately need. And so I will continue to call him a Democrat, though currently maybe one of my least favorites. Definitely one of my least favorites, maybe my least favorite at the moment. Okay, Curious One says, it seems like Johnson wants to keep it shut down. Yeah, well, he's a piece of shit. He doesn't give a shit about people suffering. Mike Green says, do you think there is someone who has a copy of the files? Potentially, the FBI is a large institution, and so potentially there's somebody who has done their due diligence. Jack says, should illegal immigrants have the right to vote in elections for the land that they live on? So there are certain states that allow undocumented people to vote in state or citywide elections, but they are not able to vote in federal elections. Now, is that a good idea or a bad idea? Either way, I don't know. The rhetoric from the right about immigrants, about Democrats loving immigrants because they help us cheat to win elections, is obviously bullshit. But giving them the right to vote in state and citywide elections just kind of buoys that conspiracy theory. And, is the damage of that policy worth whatever benefit it is to have those people be able to vote on the land that they are currently living in? I don't know. Yeah, if you are somebody who's an undocumented immigrant, even if you are a valuable member of society, even if you are contributing more to tax revenue than you were taking away in government services, do you have the right to vote in a country that you are not a citizen of? Maybe there should be dispensations for people that are in the process of becoming citizens, allowing them to vote. I personally recognize the value of immigrants, and so I don't really have a problem with it. I can understand the argument against it, like what right do they have if they're not a citizen? I'm not just going to go fly over to France and vote in one of their elections. But I think there are definitely some substantive layers to this issue, as opposed to just saying if you're not a citizen you can't vote, kind of a thing. So yeah, I'm open to an argument. I maybe lean a little bit more towards we should expand the voting rights of people that are here so long as they are in the process of becoming citizens or gainfully employed, have established a residency, have children here, something like that. But I'm not willing to die on that mountain. Airway Abraham says, thoughts on young lady who spoke up against Prince Andrew and SA unaliving herself. So according to her brother, he says that it was very likely that she unalived herself just because of the emotional turmoil that she was going under, having suffered that abuse and having continued to suffer abuse from being somebody who decided to speak out, which, obviously put the target on them by all these powerful people and their fan base, I do think it looks suspicious as hell, but, according to her brother, it tracks. Vitamin C says, but I don't think that they should vote. All right, well, you and I are allowed to have disagreements, Vitamin C. We don't have to figure this out, just the two of us. We're a country of 300 million people. Jack says, what AI laws should be put in place immediately? I believe anything regarding children for sure. Jack, I wish that I had a solution to that problem immediately, but I don't. I'm worried about AI in a million different ways. We need to make sure that they are not making military decisions. We need to make sure that they are not making healthcare decisions without human oversight. We need to make sure that they are not spreading misinformation and propaganda. We need to make sure that that the companies that are profiting from AI are paying their own fucking electric bill. Like right now, people that live in, I think, West Virginia are having to pay 3x their electric bill because they are subsidizing AI data centers. Yeah. And I'm not sure how we do that. I'm not the policy wonk that knows exactly what laws need to be put into place to make sure all those things happen. But that I think needs to be addressed immediately. Yeah, kids using AI to cheat in school is an issue. Judges using AI to pass judgment, I think is something that needs to be legislated against as well. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Rich was here says, isn't AI already making health decisions for insurance purposes. I have heard that some companies are doing that, yes. And that's, again, get the fuck out of there, you know. Let's see here. Sonia Dabas says, by the way, I'm Antifa too. You are an anti-fascist, Sonia Dabas, or are you saying that you are a member of the non-existent group Antifa? Kimberlina says, it's terrifying given that Amazon was able to be hacked and shut down. That is accurate. Vitamin C says, okay, I'm new here, but what the heck is this administration doing with Argentina? It makes no sense. So Vitamin C, it does make sense if you understand that the Trump administration is only in this for themselves and their billionaire buddies. So they want to support Argentina for a couple of different reasons. Number one, a lot of Trump's rich friends are heavily invested in the economy in Argentina, and if the economy of Argentina crashes, then all of those guys lose millions of dollars, potentially more. Also, Argentina is run by a libertarian autocrat, and because they are also far-right extremists, they want to make sure that they have examples of far-right extremism working in other countries and being good for the economy. Also, the leader of Argentina, I forget what his name is, kisses Trump's ass like 24/7, and so of course Trump is personally incentivized to help that dude out. So yeah, America suffers. The billionaires in the Republican Party all do great. It's the same old fucking story. Kimberlina says, invested in what in Argentina? Certain businesses or I can't pronounce that dude's name. I can't remember how to Malaya. I forgot how to pronounce the dude's name or something like that. So there are a bunch of different ways that you can invest in the economy in other countries. You can invest in companies. You can invest in that market, like the same way that you can invest in just the Dow or the S&P. You can also invest in Argentina's version of that. Or you can just bet on the currency. Like you can just transfer a lot of your dollars into, I think they have pesos in Argentina. But if the value of those pesos decreases, then you end up losing money on that investment. There's a bunch of different ways that you can get economically involved in other countries. Lika says the corruption is astounding. That is 100% accurate. Curious One says a lot of Nazis went to Argentina after World War II. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? Curious One, how about that? Millet, thank you. Javier Millet. Yes, it's Rocketeer with the assist. Average Joe, you don't have to argue with that dude, but I will say that the more comments that he puts in my chat, the better off I do in the algorithm. So go for it, my guy. Vitamin C says, ridiculous, thank you. We are cattle ranchers. Horrid. Yeah, I feel so fucking bad for you guys. I feel bad for all the soybean farmers that are losing out on contracts because of this stupid shit, Yeah, and I hope that you are doing the work, Vitamin C, of unelecting all the Republicans that are letting this fucking happen, I guarantee you that the Democratic Party would be better for your business. Better than this fucking shit, Mike Green says, what do you think that the whole administration will move to Argentina after to escape prosecution? Mike, I assumed that Trump was going to leave the country after his first term to escape legal liability, but, there has to be, I guess, a value of staying here in America. And I think the threat is diminished because of how rich and powerful all of these people are, where they can either stall into infinity any legal consequences or, use their money to hire a bunch of lawyers to find them some loophole to get them out of it. Like, I think they're just betting on their money saving them in one way or another. Like the tentacles of the billionaire class in order to escape legal liability are multitudinous. And so, yeah, I would love it if they felt so threatened that they had to move to Argentina, but I'm guessing they're just going to stay and try to fight it with all of their billions and billions of dollars on their, billionaire buddies and all of their influence, Bobo123 says Garland waited too long. I tend to agree with that take, Bobo, but also we kind of don't know. We kind of don't know what was going on in Merrick Garland's office until I see the tell-all book from somebody that was working in his office saying that Garland slow-rolled it and that everybody was telling him to pick up the pace. My personal opinion is that he dragged his feet, but it also could just be that what he was trying to do was really difficult. Jack says, do you think our government faked the moon landing? No, I do not. East meets Westy, good to see you again. Okay. Lika says, do you think they'll implement no felons for president before 2028? The Republicans aren't going to. We would need to get a massive influx of Democrats in government for that to happen. Apple Butter Rum says the Supreme Court is corrupt. The current Supreme Court is corrupt. That is 100% accurate. All right, good. Thank you for being here, Average Joe. It's the Rocketeer says, dudes hanging onto those sideburns like crazy. Yeah, for real, man. That's a fucking crime against humanity. That dude's sideburns. Eru says, you are very gracious. They're all guilty until proven innocent in my book. Eru, I learn from people that have done those jobs that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know about. Mike Green says, have you seen the TikTok where the farmer is saying how corn has gone up and the tariffs are working? I have not seen that TikTok, Mike Green, but you have to take everything that you see on the internet with a massive grain of salt. Bobo says Biden waited too long to drop out. That is 100% accurate, Bobo. And I did read the tell-all book about that, and him and his fucking inner circle, everybody that did cover for him, they're fucking guilty as hell, man. Fucking rake them over the coals, man. Kimberlina says, will a Democrat take Collins' Senate seat? I think if we get Graham Plattner, it is likely that he takes that seat. If we get the other more centrist Democrat, I think it's a little less likely. That's just my opinion, though. Vitamin C says, why are Democrats still milquetoast? Let's go. None of what he's doing seems legal. So Vitamin C, you bring up an excellent point. And it's a very complicated question to answer. So let me know if you're still here before I go on this monologue. So short version is that the Democrats have almost zero political power right now. They have some power in the states. They have some power in the Senate in that they are able to filibuster things like the spending bill, for example. But there is very, very little that they can do to hold the current administration accountable. Still here, Vitamin C? Let me know. So they're doing what they can. They're doing what they can to call attention to what the Trump administration is doing. They're doing what they can to activate and engage the American public, because it really is the only people who can get us out of this right now are us. It's us. And the Democratic Party is doing what they can to coordinate and inspire people to do the work to stop Donald Trump, but they can't. We did not give them enough political power in 2024 to do anything to stop Donald Trump right now. Oh no, are you not still here? Vitamin C, or can you not type because you're driving or something? I'll keep going anyways. And here's my other thing that I want to say about milquetoast. And Flamingo Mo, come on, we're not correcting people's spelling here. Come on, Flamingo Mo. So here's the other thing I will say about Democrats being milquetoast. If you've been paying attention to politics for a little while, you have noticed a weird trend of Democrats being held to a much higher standard than the Republican Party. This is not just that Democrats say something that is like mildly offensive and then they have to resign, versus Donald Trump posting an AI video of dropping shit on a bunch of protesters. It goes back even further than that to Al Gore and W. Bush, where you have to be perfect as a Democrat, and we will excuse almost anything that a Republican politician does. So that environment, I think, has created a Democratic Party that is almost like in an abusive relationship with America, where they feel like they can never say or do anything right, or people will yell and scream at them. And so they have leaned really hard into polling and focus groups in order to make all of their policies and their public statements be the most inoffensive, agreeable by every human being on the planet statements. And it has caused them to sound very robotic and milquetoast and like a politician. And that has turned a lot of people off. So I think it needs to change. I think that we are seeing a new crop of candidates that are rejecting that kind of focus group speak. But I do have a little bit of sympathy for them, because I don't think that this was their fault. I think that they were reacting to the environment that they were working in, where Al Gore funded the organization that was able to invent the internet, and the internet was extremely popular in 1999. And he went out there and he said, if you like the internet, well, I'm the guy that got funding for the internet. And then everybody was like, Al Gore just said he invented the internet. And then ridicule, he loses that election. And then, Barack Obama comes out in 2008 and says, I'm going to make healthcare less expensive for everybody. And everybody was like, boo, boo, that's government takeover of healthcare. And I saw on Fox News that it was going to have death panels in it. Boo, boo. And it's like, we're just trying to make it cheaper for you to live. And then they passed the Affordable Care Act. They made it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against people for having pre-existing conditions. And America was like, boo, boo, we hate this. The website doesn't work as good as we want it to work, boo. And then they voted en masse for Republicans to take over Congress. Joe Biden brought inflation that was caused by Trump from 9% down to 2.4%. And America was like, boo, boo, you're too old. You didn't do it fast enough, blah, blah, blah. So, it's partially the fault of billionaire propagandists, and it's partially our fault for demanding perfection out of Democrats and excusing unbelievable flaws from Republicans. It is a culture that I am desperately fighting against, of holding Republicans accountable for the shit that they do and giving Democrats credit for the things that they do, Alrighty, everybody. Let's see here. Did I ever get a response from Vitamin C? Did he ever show us that he was still here? I hope he was. I hope he heard my answer, because I really did like that answer. Okay, milquetoast just means like wishy-washy, lame, like milquetoast would be like, if somebody says, what do you like? Do you like apples or oranges better? And you would go like, oranges are great and apples are wonderful and they both taste good and are healthy, like white bread. There you go, East Meets. That's a much better explanation than my thing, plain and boring. East Meets Westy Bestie did it in 5 words and I failed. All right, everybody, I'm going to start wrapping things up. Get in your final questions. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the gifts and the likes and the shares. I really appreciate all of the support that you guys give me. It's the Rocketeer. Wait, you don't like Purity Test? Yeah, no, I don't. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know we're all struggling. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. I have a store that you can buy things from, and the link to both of those things is in my bio. And you can also send gifts and be super subscribers and super fans on all the various channels, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube. Any way that you guys want to support the show, I really appreciate you guys supporting the show. Tell your friends how great it is and everything like that. And if there are things that you would like me to do more of on here, then let me know. There are lots of different ways that you can get in touch. And I encourage you guys to get in touch. You can email me through my website. My DMs are open. You can get in touch through my Discord, which is another link that is in my bio. And I encourage you guys to do that because I want to help you guys to be more involved and be more informed. And if there are ways that I can answer questions for you or direct you towards great organizations or politicians to volunteer for, I want to be that resource for you guys. And if you so use me and abuse me, use me until I am all used up. Mia's LV Adventure says, how do you pronounce milquetoast again? It is pronounced exactly how you are spelling it, Mia. Alrighty, what else? The Discord is a great resource because you can find recommendations for books and podcasts and also activist activities, organizations to volunteer for. And so check out the Discord, join. There are great people there. A little bit of discussion happening in the general comments section, which I love. I love people chatting with each other on there. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And just lastly, my heartfelt plea that everybody out there do the work because we need people doing the work. The work is working. We just need more people doing it. And we need more work getting done. Do the work. Recruit other people to do the work. That is the only way that we're going to get out of this, guys. Okay. Dan Blackwood says, is there a Patreon? There is a Patreon. Link is in my bio. Bobo says, more info on doing away with Electoral College. Yes, Google the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. If states sign up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, then we can basically override the Electoral College. It is an agreement that says that whoever wins the popular vote is who gets these states' electors. And it only kicks in once they have 270 electoral votes signed on to do it. And so when that happens, when we have 270 electoral votes that are committed to giving their votes to whoever wins the popular vote, Electoral College is gone. It is done. Dan Blackworth says management says plug the Patreon. Oy, 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 oy. All right, everybody. Let's see here. All Animals Lives Matter says, why can the Democrats not say anything good about the Democrats? It's always Trump. I say plenty of good things about Democrats. All Animals Lives Matter. If you are following leftists that only say negative things about the Democratic Party, maybe they're being paid to only say negative things about the Democratic Party. Or maybe they're only saying negative things about Trump. But I mean, the fact is, Donald Trump is the president right now, and he is doing a million terrible things a day. Things that are hurting people, things that are putting billions of dollars into the pockets of him and his billionaire cronies, things that are taking food out of our mouths and making healthcare less accessible and housing less affordable. And so, yeah, maybe we are prioritizing talking about all the terrible things that Trump is doing and not hyping up all of the past wins of the Democratic Party. All Animals Lives Matter. Jack says, who writes Fox News' narratives? Who do they express themselves? Why do they express themselves like that? I believe that comes from the Murdochs. Like, the Murdochs are the ones who own Fox News, and so they basically set the editorial there, I think. But I'm not really sure what the inner workings of that are. Jack, if you're interested in that, there was a movie that came out maybe like 10 years ago called Bombshell with Charlize Theron and Barbie. What's her name? Margot Robbie. And that movie is excellent. It is a massive indictment of Fox News. And also, in my opinion, not nearly mean enough. All right, everybody, I'm out of here. Thanks again for being here. Do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys here tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.